Okay, I'd like to call this meeting of the Board of Education to order. Adam, will you please call the roll?
Mr. Argo.
Here.
Mr. Horton. Mr. Wynn. Ms. Schaefer.
Here.
Ms. Casper.
Here. I need a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Second. Any discussion? Adam, will you please call the roll?
Mr. Argo.
Yes.
Ms. Schaefer.
Yes.
Ms. Casper.
Yes, please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, we have Mr. Gary Strosky here to do our public participation training. So the floor is yours.
All right, thank you. You've got the presentations in front of you, easy to read. I can send this back to you a little larger font, so you have it to take away.
Thank you.
Didn't realize how that would print. So same thing as that you'll see is up on the screen in front of you. So going through this, the way it's structured is, well, First Amendment is kind of why we're here. First Amendment does not require public participation for public bodies, but once a public body decides to have public participation, then the rules of the First Amendment kick in. So that's why we've got that up there on the first slide. We'll go through just a couple things on public participation first, but then hit your policy that you have. And then I've got some example case law court decisions that'll help illustrate how difficult sort of policing public participation can be. Hopefully it'll also help teach you what to do and what not to do in various situations. But yeah, like I said, you're not obligated to have public participation, as you know. But if you do, then the courts have said you've created what's called, they call a limited public forum, which means that people have First Amendment rights, not full rights. There can be time, place, and manner restrictions, which we'll talk about. But that is the sort of constitutional term, limited public forum. It would be the same thing as if you opened up your front lawn to signs. Anyone could put, within reason, signs out front. They couldn't have a sign with obscenities on it or anything like that, but different public messages for public issues could be out there. Difference here is just its speech, and when people get it up in front of you, you don't necessarily know what they're going to say. So I think the key is really knowing and understanding the policy and the limits that the policy allows and places on people, and enforcing those and enforcing them even-handedly, so that if it's enforced against somebody in one meeting and not in another, that person can't come back and say, well, you committed a First Amendment violation because you enforced this against me, but not against that person. That would look like viewpoint discrimination. And that's really what the First Amendment sort of case law is saying. A public body can't have viewpoint discrimination, meaning we're going to shut one particular viewpoint down over another. I think I already touched on some of this, and please ask questions as we go if you have them as they pop up. Here's your policy. The kind of overarching rework of this policy is a theme that the board still must conduct its public business in an efficient manner. We're going to have the 30 minutes of public participation. Each individual gets to speak for 3 minutes each. There can be an extended period of that, but there's an overall policy statement in here saying, we have a commitment to conduct the public business, so we're not going to let public participation continue on for hours at end. It occurs at regular meetings of the board, so that's in your policy. So the way I read that is this public participation would not occur at any special meeting of the board, just at regular meetings.
I'm checking to make sure it says where action is taken. I'm just double checking that.
Yeah,
It does.
because we
Okay,
won't
good.
do
Yeah.
them at these.
Yes, we won't do it at these unless there was action on the.
Oh, yeah, this
That's a work
is not a special meeting
This is
today?
a work
Okay,
session or-
gotcha. Yeah, so you set those ahead of time. That would also be a regular meeting then, but there is a limiter in that language that says where action is to be taken. And the reason for that is because public participation, really the topics people can speak on are limited to agenda items. So I don't know if you guys have thought through this process yet of how you're going to do it, but it does have a sign-up sheet where anyone who wants to come in and talk will sign up. They put their name on there. They have to be, you can see on the slide, a resident, business owner, parent or legal guardian, an employee, or a student. So, somebody from out of state with no interest in this district can't show up and speak on something. It's got to be one of these individuals. But there's the registration component and then the time component as well of 3 minutes. If I've seen the best way I ever saw it done was when I was at a school board meeting and 100 people showed up to criticize the board for getting rid of a baseball coach. The treasurer there had a clock in front of him, hit it. 3 minutes goes. Once it's done, made a noise. The person was done speaking. We moved on to the next person. So if you haven't thought about how you're going to enforce the 3 minute limit, I would start to do
We
that.
have a clock now,
And it'll go on board docs on the screen just like we had before.
so it'll be on the screen.
It won't be that little,
It'll
the
be-
one we've been using was
Is the
because we
little one.
weren't on board docs.
Okay,
Once we go back to board docs, we'll hit that timer, they'll then go on the screen so everybody can see it.
Okay, great.
And you mentioned limited to agenda
That's what I was gonna
items.
say.
I thought that because it's nearly impossible for the
Yeah, we-
presiding officer to.
We did not include the agenda item
state
piece.
that it had to be on agenda items. We didn't put that in because we didn't know how that was enforceable, because once they've gone.
Did you
On to
take that
another.
out?
Yes,
Was it in there at one point?
I think it was an option that we could
it
put
was
in there.
in when we had two,
Mhm.
that the
But yeah,
first
it's
one
not in
had
there
to be
limited to agenda items.
on agenda items, and the second one could be a free-for-all, whatever you wanted.
If you are looking at our policy that is currently listed on board docs, that is not the current policy.
Correct.
I'm looking at the one you sent. You
The
may
one, yeah, the draft one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, maybe that was in there. So your policy then that you actually adopted would allow someone to speak on anything.
I
Yes.
believe it
Okay.
was the same as the draft
Yes.
though, so, yeah, I think.
Yeah, it was not limited to agenda items.
Because there was no way, we figured there was no way to
To know.
monitor that, thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks to what's
Yeah,
going on
okay.
At 7 a.m. To
Yeah.
monitor that, because once they got up there, I mean, that the presiding officer would have to decide, is this agenda? Would you decide halfway through that it was agenda and make them stop?
Yeah, it would be tough.
So we figured it would be easier just to
Okay.
do the 3 minutes on.
So then, they're asked, so this is the, once someone has registered, they get up to speak. And then this is kind of the rules that govern that. They're asked to first be recognized by the board president. So Kelly, if you're the board president, you would say, you probably have the list in front of you, so you may know their name. You may say, okay, your time to speak is now. They're asked to first announce their name. The 3 minutes would start. Once it's done, move on to the next. There's a total of 30 minutes. And then that's unless it's extended by a vote of the board. And that would go for 90 minutes, up to total maximum of 90 minutes. So another 60.
So,
Now, this is policy, so you could, if you had some huge issue in front of the community, extend that even further, if you wanted to, but 90 minutes of public participation is a lot.
what about, the 3 minutes, at the end of 3 minutes, if they don't stop talking and they continue, what are our recourses?
Well, the first thing I would do would be to remind them that their 3 minutes is up and ask them to stop talking. If they refuse to do that, I would tell them that they're out of order. And if they continue to refuse, then that's when you could have law enforcement remove them. Not a great option. Hopefully they comply, but the rules are the rules. They have 3 minutes to speak, and they would be, because there's assuming there's just a 30-minute limit, they would be taking time away from other speakers too. And so hopefully they abide by the request, but if not, and they just stayed there and kept talking, you could also adjourn. Not recess, I should say, would probably be the better term, because you're doing this at the beginning of your meeting, so you wouldn't want to adjourn the meeting, but you could recess, and then the meeting would take a pause. That might even be a better option than immediately having them removed by law enforcement. Okay, so I do think the use of the recess, a lot of our clients don't do that. I don't think they think about it in the middle of a meeting, but it is a good way to sort of push pause and call a timeout, the board can adjourn, go back and, obviously don't discuss public business outside of the public, but just take a break, 5 to 10 minutes, come back, and hopefully things have calmed down.
Who can call a recess? Anyone?
Anyone could make a motion for a recess, and then it would be seconded, and I would just go through that process. Yeah.
Well, to do it without a vote, the board president can call or the treasurer can call, but if any other motions and seconds, then that does require a vote.
Okay, so, okay.
Unfortunately, we had to really review Robert's Rules of Orders
Yeah,
several
we've
years
done
back.
that.
Yeah.
So there's no option to stop the mic at the 3-minute mark or if the person
Oh, if you could-
continues?
Yeah, if you could control that, you could do that as well.
So
Right.
we will have a button that basically can be controlled that the mic would stop working. Their voice might keep going.
I was
but
just
we
gonna say,
have
you can
an
still
out-
hear
yeah.
their voice.
Consistency is going to be the key though. If, no matter who it is, then just make sure at 3.
That was my
You would do that.
question. Kind of Adam and I were thinking, same page apparently. I think we've given the courtesy of the person to be able to finish their sentence. Is that what we want? Or when it says 3 minutes, is the mic button being pushed? Because I'm just thinking of the last couple public participations we've had. The 3 minutes is that, but then somebody finishes that thought.
Well, it depends though. For me, the problem would be if they finish their thought, is their thought finishing that sentence or is finishing their thought 2 more sentences? And now we've gone 4 minutes and the person next is
And
only
that-
gonna get 3 minutes.
And
So I think that,
consistency
remember
piece.
the blurb we talked about reading at the beginning that just kind of summarizes all of this and it'd be on the board agenda? I mean, it could clearly say the mic will be stopped at 3 minutes and we'll define our roles, but if Adam's doing we can literally, even if you're mid-sentence, we could just hit it.
It's the only way, in my opinion, to
That
keep
it's fair.
fair.
So when we
I
were on
agree.
Zoom, it was a lot easier. Believe it or not, when we were on Zoom,
Right.
it was later. So when we would run the public participation, because I had to turn people's mics on from the back of the room on the Zoom controls. And as soon as it would hit 3 minutes, we would just turn it off. It was but it was a lot easier. So what we don't want to get into is what we had that First Amendment suit on, which was people say good, you let it go. If people say bad, you don't.
Right.
3 minutes means 3 minutes, period, if
And
you
I
go that
think
route.
We'll have to say that a couple of times in a row at a meeting, that just for the sake of fairness, for the sake of making sure that everybody gets their 3 minutes in their time, it doesn't look like.
Yeah.
Does our blurb say anything about when the time starts? Because I know that's been a point of contention in kind of previous listening sessions that we've had, is when the time started.
Typically, what we've done is we try to start it whenever they start past the, I'm saying my name and address, past that.
Okay.
As soon as I start talking, the only issue that we're going to run into with the board docs versus the little timer, which we'll probably use the little timer. I guess we could use the board docs for the 30-minute, and we could use the little timer for the person, one or the other, because I can't do 2 timers at the same time on board docs. So to do that, that would be good. But that's typically where with board docs, on the 3-minute one, sometimes you'll run into a little bit of an internet lag
Yeah.
that makes it just a little clunky, especially we've seen before where people are not exactly lined up, but
They are like.
done, next person, boom. And I'm like trying to get the board doc to turn off the 3 to start the new 3. So it probably would be smarter to use the little one for
But do
that.
we need something bigger than that? Because I assume that the people will be speaking from the floor, not the stage. Did
Correct.
we talk about?
We
So
did.
for them to see it, would it need to be a bigger version of that clock? Or do you think people could see it? I guess if we put, depending on where we put the podium on the floor,
You
That's
should be
what-
able to see, because you can see that on the big screen, right, in the room?
not if he uses the little clock.
Whichever one's the big one, we'll be able to see. So if we do the 30-minute countdown on the big one, that would be easier to see than the small one. It just depends on where you put the podium, I would suppose.
Right, but I worry about if someone's trying to keep track by looking at the 3-minute little clock, can they see it from the floor to the stage?
If the podium was on the side on the opposite side for me, I would think it'd be pretty difficult.
That's
If it
what I
was
think.
on this side, if we're sitting on the stage and it was on this side, it might be a little easier to see. We do have a big
Can we
one that
just get a
we
bigger clock?
do have a big one that we bought that I haven't tested yet. It's been 4 years probably. It's been a while that we've had. I do have a bigger one in the office
Let's try that
It's not-
one.
well,
I
it's-
want people to be able to
it's
see.
just-
I don't want to, if we're gonna stop them right at 3, they should know where they are in the 3-minute.
Yeah, it's got a remote and everything.
Oh.
I got comfortable with the little one and that's the one we stuck with.
Well, and it was
So-
easier when we were doing the listening session and it wasn't that far away, but they're gonna be on the floor and the clock's gonna be up. It might be hard to see.
Another board member mentioned to me that I guess from previous experience, people had ceded their time to other people.
They
I don't-
tried to, and we
they-
did
okay,
not allow
okay.
it,
I
but
just
that
wanted to
was an
make-
attempt
Okay.
to seed it and.
Okay. I just
we
wanted to
said
make
that
sure
we
that
did
we were
not
all on
at
the
the-
same page with that.
Do we have to put that somewhere?
I think that's in the policy.
Okay.
It says you can't register
don't-
another person,
yeah.
so that kind of gets
Same
to
thing.
that. But also each person just gets 3 minutes, so you couldn't say, I'm gonna give an additional minute and a half to somebody else, so that they now have 4.5 minutes.
Well, and I think it was more of when they tried to give their time to somebody else, it was somebody outside the district.
When I'm
Okay.
working on that blurb, that draft of the blurb, I'll try to make sure we're getting certain pieces about time starting.
And I think we'll have to
microphone.
do that a couple of times.
I figure, I mean, that, I'm assuming that will be on the agenda, like at the bottom of the agenda, and you will read it at the start of every, okay. Kind of like we have the QR code, that'll just be in the agenda underneath that section.
Okay.
On the 3 minutes and the enforcing it consistently, I do like just cutting them off at 3 minutes to make it fair. And even if I know it's hard, if you just have one person who wants to talk, the inclination is to just let them speak. But at the next meeting, you may have 20
Right.
people who want to talk. So I think
And that's
no
come up
matter,
already.
It
yeah,
has.
no
With
matter
the-
what.
Yeah.
With the
And I just
minutes
think,
recording, maybe just killing the mic at the 3 minutes, just
Yeah.
killing the mic. Then it keeps everybody out of the weeds of stopping somebody.
but
and-
you can't, cutting the mic won't stop them from talking if they're in the auditorium. The auditorium can still hear without the mic.
It'll keep it from picking up in the minutes, so.
Right, right. But yeah, and I think that it's important to say that it's for fairness and not.
Mhm.
Okay.
The other thing on this slide, this is from your policy. This is not, it says this is not a time to address or question board members individually.
Mhm.
So I don't know if you want to have that, like a blurb on the sign up sheet for
It's
that
not a
as well.
dialogue, yeah.
Yeah, just so people understand, because a lot of times people get up and think that's what they're going to get.
Right.
Back and forth.
Well, and that it's directed to the board, not to the audience.
Your policy permits audio and video recordings, which now is commonplace. Back in the day before that was just something in your pocket you could use. People were worried about obstructions, and you do still have language like that in there. So if someone brought in some big obstruction to record, that's going to be an issue. But for the most part, it's not anymore. They can hold up their phone. Anyone can hold up their phone and record at a board meeting.
Is there another question somebody had, is there a section where we want those people stationed if they are recording? Like, is there a designated, apparently in our height, there were lots of cameras in the room. So if the podium is over by my side on the floor, do you want like an area that said if you want to record and it's like, this is your area?
For you could enforce that.
But we could encourage, like this, I'm gonna call it the media area.
I was gonna say the
Yeah.
press area.
The media, again, like, different board members said, like, where does not the media, but where do the other cameras go? Is that the other side?
I think if they're bringing in really large cameras, like the media would,
Kind of
you
the-
can't just sit them in the middle next, right behind where Aaron is and block people's view. So I think that makes some sense.
So maybe podium on the side where I normally am, and then the media box or whatever down on, Mr. Wynn's side. And then the other question that had come up is, if you put them in the pit, like not on the stage, right now, the way the video is structured, you wouldn't capture that person. You just see us. So you will hear their voice, but you won't see their physical being. Are we comfortable with just hearing the audio of that, or would you like the person in the shot, in the frame?
My personal 2 cents is like right now, typically media is in the way back because their camera has the Zoom ability to do that. I don't personally think that we need to state where they need to be, but that's.
I think she's talking about the speaker.
The speaker.
The speaker won't be in.
The speaker,
picture.
like right now, the way the frame is set up, it's just the board. So if you put that person in the pit and they're speaking, you will hear their voice, but you wouldn't see their visage. Do you want to see the person on camera?
I-
Does it?
I don't, I don't think that's up to, I mean, I think it's how the room is set
The
up.
room is
and it
set up
is
that
set
you
up
would
and
not
they-
That's
see
how
it.
it's set
They
up.
film
Okay.
from where they film and
Okay.
they're not
No,
on
not-
the stage and.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure, because like when Todd and I had looked at it, it's just us, right?
Well,
So
they'll
again,
say their
you'll hear your-
name and
right.
they'll, I mean, if the concern
Okay.
is that that the community wants to, the speaker wants the community to hear on the recording, they will still hear on the recording
Just
and
wanna
they will
make
say
sure.
their name.
I mean, I think people will probably say, why can't you see the person? But I mean, it doesn't make sense to spend a whole bunch of money
just
to
gonna
make
say
it happen. But
To retro.
yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not sure what kind of flexibility we have with
Okay.
AV set up.
That's a question, I guess, for Todd.
Yeah, we have a meeting, the team has a meeting this week just to debrief from this, to make sure of all of our roles and who's doing what, and just to make sure we're prepared for next week. So we'll just, and again, next week's a little bit of an anomaly
That's
because
be
we're in
different
this
'cause we're in
room
here.
rather than the other room, but we'll just talk through that to make sure. Okay.
And that might be something we'll need to say next week, that it'll be different
Yeah.
when we get to the auditorium.
Okay, next piece of the policy there, people can bring in posters or signs, but they can't obstruct the view of others, obstruct the recording of the meeting, distract the board or audience members, or disrupt or interfere with the orderly progress of the meeting. That language is all from your policy. So if somebody was in the back holding up a sign the entire meeting, that's probably not too disruptive. They're not blocking anyone's view, that would be permitted.
Yeah,
And
keep in mind from where we sit, it's going to be really hard for them to block the camera because of the way the angle comes in. If they were blocking it from other people,
I was gonna say,
we
if
have
they
to
were in
keep
the
an eye on
fourth row
that.
and holding it up and people were in the sixth row, they wouldn't be able to, see.
Oh, it's part of an agenda.
So there's an exception if an administrator gets up and wants to show the board something, obviously, that they've built in an exception there in that policy. For violations, first requested to follow these rules, and then if refused, he or she is asked to leave the meeting. Separate from where this language is in the policy is the idea of the recess we talked about, so that would also be an option and probably a better one than just
And
immediately
asking
having
someone to leave the meeting.
Yeah, you may have to get to that point, but oftentimes we find the recess helps. So board president, whoever that is, it's Kelly now, but in the future, maybe somebody different. So that's why these rules are important for all board members. But in addition, every board member needs to understand them because maybe somebody gets up at public participation and starts railing against you and you're not the board president. And then you start hollering back at them, trying to shut them down. That's not a good idea. So we want to be sure we understand the roles here. So the board president would be the one to interrupt, warn, or terminate the person's session if, in this case, for their speaking, they've been repetitive, obscene, or true threats are made. Those are really the only three options. So I think it might still be in this slide deck, but I had a slide in here about board members needing to have thick skin with these policies. So before, there was some general language in a lot of these policies about an inability to criticize, which the First Amendment really isn't going to stand for. So really have to take it for the most part. The repetitive nature, there is a case in here that, and basically all the rules in your policy come from the court cases. So when we've got repetitive right here, there was a case where I think it was out of California. Some parents kept coming to board meetings complaining about the football program. The board had a rule that said if you can only do that basically once. You can't come and complain about the same thing over and over. So they shut them down. That family did challenge, and the court upheld the Board of Education's rule in that case. So that's why you see
So meaning,
repetitive comments here.
okay, so they come on the first week and they talk about the football team and they want to fire the coach.
Mhm.
And then they come the second week and they talk about the football team and fire the coach. We could,
It's repetitive, right?
So we can't say it. We can't stop them because it would be content based, right?
You say
No,
apparently
or
we
you
can't.
No, this is one of the
This is an
rules. So
exception.
these three things here,
Okay.
repetitive, obscene,
Oh,
or
so
they
you-
make a true threat, they could be stopped. And so, if you, the way I would see it going, if they come and speak on topic one, let's say football at meeting one, then the next meeting they come and they start in again, the board president would probably interrupt and say, we have a rule against repetitive comments. You were just here last week speaking about this. Do you have anything new to add? And if they don't, they should sit down and let somebody else have a turn rather than keep talking. So that's probably the way to handle that. I don't think the repetitive, your policy doesn't speak to this, but the court decisions really don't touch on that either. It's on a person to person basis that a person is being repetitive rather than 10 people showing up to speak at the same thing. I don't think you could shut that down. I think you let that go. If you wanted to, your policy doesn't speak to that, but if you wanted to do that, probably need to amend that policy. But I see that as on a person to person basis. Or in the California case, it was a family basis. If it's a husband and wife and you know that, I don't know that the husband can get up week one and speak and the wife could get up week two, speak on the exact same topic. They're really taking time away from somebody else.
So is there who gets to determine what's obscene?
The board president. There's a good Supreme Court case that says, tries to define what obscenity is, and the court just says you kind of know it when you see it. So that's easier said than done, but obviously, if they get up and are yelling swear words, that's obscene. It's just going to be a judgment call. It's really tough to predict what people can do. They can also be obscene in ways that really don't use swear words or cuss words, right? And so there were court decisions about the trying to think of it. What was the like the F. Joe Biden thing? What was that term?
I know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, Let's Go Brandon. So kids would wear those shirts to school, and then this would make its way to court. The school districts would discipline them for wearing an obscene shirt, and the courts would generally uphold those. So that's an example of maybe somebody says something that truly isn't obscene, but you know the context behind it, and it could be. So it's really tough.
What about, there's been cases where people have disrobed at the microphone? Is that like, at
That
what
would
point
qualify.
but at what point do you stop them? Like, when is it appropriate to stop? Where's that line? And what's allowed? I mean,
First, second,
honestly,
take over.
it's
It could be.
okay. I'm saying this because it's
It
actually
happened.
happened.
It's actually happened.
Yeah, correct. You're gonna have to jump in pretty quickly. And I don't know where the law enforcement is seated. If it was the room we were in the other day, they're pretty close and can get to them. But yeah, you're gonna have to cut them off pretty quickly once you realize what's happening. Obviously ask them to stop. If they don't, gonna call for law enforcement to jump in because that would certainly qualify as being obscene. Okay. And then true threats, these wouldn't be threats like I'm gonna take you down in the next election or something like that, right? It's gonna be true threats that would make a reasonable person fear for their safety.
Right.
That's what those are. Talk about the other things on there. Just court decisions. And we'll go through a few of these. This is the sort of seminal U.S. Supreme Court decision from 1976. This was a group of non-union teachers wanted to get up and speak out against a fair share fee that was being considered by the school board in contract negotiations with the union. Weird case, but basically the courts up until the Supreme Court's decision held that the school board had to stop them from speaking because it was basically in our state an unfair labor practice charge to let them speak out against this at a school board meeting. Seems silly now just based on the history of public participation and where we are 50 years later that anyone would do that, but that's what happened. So the Wisconsin courts allowed it. Then it got to the Supreme Court and they said, well, they're speaking out on a matter of public concern. You really can't stop them from doing that. So that's what kind of kicked this all off. This is a case from Ohio. This is Madison local school district, so not too far away. After they had, the mass shooting, this is a 2021 decision. So this decision applies in our jurisdiction. It's from the Sixth Circuit Court of Appeals. Applies to a few other states as well. But this is really why you started seeing the Neola policy start to change, because they had a Neola policy that really it prevented frivolous, repetitive, harassing comments. When you asked about, determining what is obscene, I think that's a little easier to determine than what is frivolous or harassing. Those are just kind of, loose terms, and that's where school boards were getting into trouble, relying on them to cut people off from speaking. So what else do I want to hit on this one?
But that's got the word repetitive that you said.
Well, the
was
repetitive was upheld. Yeah,
Okay.
that part of the decision was upheld, but the frivolous and harassing was not. Yep. Yeah, the person who got up to speak made strong statements against what they believed to be the district's pro-gun agenda, called board members arrogant and asinine. And that's what I mean when you kind of got to have thick skin. That isn't obscene. Yeah, I guess under the policy, we could consider that harassing, but that's the problem this district got into. They enforced that, and then when the courts looked at it, they said, well, what is harassing? It's too hard to define. Nobody knows what it is when they get up to speak. So just as written, it was unconstitutional. And they escorted that person from the room. They did speak in under 3 minutes. So court ruled that the policy's restriction on antagonistic, abusive, and personally directed comments, you see that in policies a lot as well, serve to prohibit speech simply because it opposes the board or others. So it was unconstitutional. They did not stand the one person, one registration requirement. So that's in your policy as well. And that's why it's in your policy, as well as time, place, and manner restrictions. And then the practical impact of this case, you can require signups, time limits, and an orderly procedure, but can't silence a speaker because they're critical, oppositional, or offensive to board members.
Or to anyone, to the staff.
Right, to the staff as well. We used to say, and on that, we used to say you can't criticize staff. I think that can happen now. Probably a way to handle that is really what they're, if they haven't followed your complaint procedure, they're really jumping to the end of that procedure. That procedure would typically require somebody to go to the person who they have the issue with, try to address it with them. If they don't get resolution there, then they move up to the chain, or to the building principal, then the superintendent, and then the school board. So just coming to the public participation meeting and railing on an employee isn't really the best thing for somebody to do, because the board can't give them the relief they want if they haven't gone through that procedure. And so when somebody does that, I don't know if you have this ability, but you could interrupt. I'd pause their time, ask them, have you followed this procedure? We do have a complaint procedure. Did you know about that? If they say no, okay, we're gonna have the superintendent get you a copy of that procedure, unpause their time, and then let them finish. You could do that, as long as they get the 3 minutes. If you just wanna let them talk, and at the end, maybe, whisper over to Ashley or Adam, hey, give them a copy of that policy so that they can file a complaint before they leave here. You could do that as well.
Maybe that's something we can do, is have that policy available, should that.
Yeah.
And I thought we would have a copy of the policy at the sign-in table, so when anybody signs in, they can just hand a copy of it.
Of the complaint policy?
Of the, no, all policy, like even the
Public
participation policy that we've updated, so everybody has that.
Yeah, you could print out some copies of the complaint policy as well, so that it's there.
Maybe just have it at the table, so it's not a,
I think that's gonna be the important one to have available for people.
Right.
Because you are going to get people who wanna come and complain.
Right.
And they just didn't know the policy existed, which
Yeah, a lot of
is
people
understandable.
don't. Right.
Yep. And then the other thing I want to touch on, kind of on registration, I think that your policy envisions a sign-in sheet, and then that ends when the meeting starts. So, Adam is starting the meetings, so I don't know who is gathering that sign-in sheet to bring back up to the table so that you know you guys got to work that out and figure
Do
that
we
out.
have some sort of like timing of that? Because I think Mr. Marshall's gonna be the person that's going to be checking residency.
It has, so we talked about that public comment, it's gonna be a little bit later in the meeting than normal because it'll be after the student presentations and after the committees. They have to be signed up by the start of the meeting. So that
That
should
gives-
give him enough time.
That's not what our policy says prior to the.
I think it
public,
does
you
say-
know,
it does say that.
Yep, I read it wrong. Sorry. You're correct.
Yeah, so that should give about 10 to 15 minutes to make sure that not only can everything's legible, we can check everybody, make sure that they meet the right guidelines. I think the one that a board member had said was clunky maybe was a business owner. Like somebody allowed a business owner to speak. I don't know if it was us, but somebody allowed a business owner to speak and really their business was not, they didn't live in the district and the business was not in the district. So
they-
just
yeah.
making sure that we check those kind of things, and we should have some time between the beginning of the agenda and the public.
Except we won't
participation.
on Wednesday because we aren't having a student spotlight. Correct.
And it makes it
But we
tricky.
will have policy reports, or we will have committee reports.
Before,
Remember, the committee reports are when our student spotlight folks would normally leave, so we'll still have that time.
so we
on
will
next-
do on a normal day, student spotlight, committee reports, then public comment.
Because the committee reports would have been the time for them to leave. Actually, we will do student spotlight, student achievement, other
Committee
reports,
Then,
and then, yeah.
so we have to
So
make
it's
sure that
before
we're,
any action, any main action, but it also allows us some time for people to depart.
so we'll just have to make sure that we right at 6 o'clock again, that can be a gray area if we let someone sign up at 6:01 and the next person at 6:02 can't sign up. So we will have
I
to make
envision
sure
that
that
table is manned, like right outside the door for sign up,
until
and then
6
6 o'clock, person is just
Yeah.
removes
So we'll have
themselves
to
from
just
that.
make sure that that's,
Consistency,
also.
consistency.
yeah, because
Yeah, and whoever is taking that away, if there's a line and you've just turned 5 people away who wanted to sign up, I would just say something to the effect of, hey, you can get it next time, but also there are other ways to contact the board via email or if your phone numbers are out there,
they are.
just to encourage them to have that option as well, because they may not want to wait until the next meeting.
So if somebody were in line, because our policy says that they weren't signed up by 6
At
o'clock.
the start, yeah.
Okay,
Good.
Yeah, same thing with the 3 minutes, kind of the cutoff immediately is the best idea.
Right.
okay.
So if you want to speak, I would recommend that they get there like a little early so that.
Yep.
In case where there is a line. I think we've
Yeah.
had that before. When we had public comment, we had lines where we've had to.
Yeah,
people.
and it seems
the
harsh,
heyday.
but doing it is the only reason to do it is to ensure fairness to everyone.
I think that sometimes gets lost, that we're just trying to be fair. We're not trying to pick and choose who speaks or what they say.
This is the football case I talked about. It was Tennessee. So we kind of touched on this, but this is the repetitive, and so this is why repetitive comments can be interrupted or cut off. This one, people can do all kinds of weird things. So a man gave a silent Nazi salute at a city council meeting. That person was removed and arrested. The city argued that after the public comment period, and so he wasn't doing this during public participation. He stood up and did it as a member of the audience.
Okay.
So the city argued that public comment had ended, and then he did that, and they said people in the audience do not have First Amendment rights. They only had those First Amendment rights while at public participation. So while sitting there, he could be removed. Not a good argument. The court rejected that and held that the public meeting remains a limited public forum, and officials may not engage in viewpoint discrimination. So this wasn't an actual disruption. So if you took their argument to the logical conclusion, people just holding a sign the entire meeting wouldn't be allowed, right? Because they were saying, well, you have no First Amendment right to hold that sign during the meeting, only during public participation. And so the court said no on that. That's not going to work. So, our practical impact here, even offensive symbolic expression may be protected if it does not actually disrupt the meeting. We can't convert an offense into a disruption by just labeling it that way. Here's another one I found interesting. The city was considering the settlement of zoning litigation that would allow the construction of a mosque. The meeting was crowded and tense. Here, the mayor limiting the comments to the agenda item, which is the settlement of the zoning litigation, and ruled that irrelevant comments were out of order, such as those that were attacking religion rather than addressing the zoning issue. The court upheld the relevance rule as reasonable and viewpoint neutral. So that's where the idea comes that you could limit public participation to agenda items. And the irrelevant comments that people were making were cut off, and the court so held that. These fly in. There we go. So just if we take all of these rules and break them down into what you can and can't do, we can set time limits. We can require advanced signups or speaker forms. We can limit comments to agenda items, but again, if your policy doesn't have that in there, you're not going to be doing that. That would be an option, though. You can stop repetitive, irrelevant, or actually disruptive comments, and then remove someone who prevents the meeting from continuing. We can't do back. Stop speech that's critical of board members or employees, or ban these kind of vague words, offensive, antagonistic, or abusive speech, without really narrowly defining them. That's just really tough to do. We don't advise it. And then we're going to apply decorum rules. We can't apply decorum rules inconsistently based on whether or not the speaker supports or opposes the board. And we can't treat offense or embarrassment as a disruption. It has to be a true disruption. So that's the end of it.
That's it.
We'll send this back to you in a larger,
In a larger
format so you can read it. I'll get that to Ashley today. If you have other questions, happy to take them.
Questions for Gary? I think we're good.
Okay,
Thank you, Gary, for
thanks.
Thank you.
joining us at 7 a.m.
Sure.
Okay, we have next. Ooh, the capital plan review. We've been waiting for this. This is exciting. Thank you.
Sure.
Are you going to be up here too?
Dan is going to be up here.
Well, then let me move back so Dan can be up here. Thanks, Gary.
Dan, do you want to sit like here so that you can see the screen also while you're?
Yeah, sure, that's great.
Hey, Dan.
Hey, how are you?
You need to plug in.
Let's see how much, it's really
Actually,
important.
I can sit up there so that I want to make sure you all can see that big screen.
Do you want to
so
sit here then?
If that's okay,
Yeah.
that'll be fine. Thank you.
I guess you can look at your screen while you're driving.
Yeah, okay. Thank you much.
Mm-hmm. Good to see you again. How we doing?
It's just. Hopefully, it won't bother you if I stand. Is that okay?
No, that's
No,
fine.
not at all.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, for me to go ahead
Mhm,
then?
yeah.
Okay, great. What we're showing you here is the result of about 2 months worth of planning process. And so, special thanks to all of your administrative staff and folks who helped do interviews. We went through a process of looking at all the materials, making sure that we had everything that they see coming over the next 10 years and getting that into a document and really a program here that you can use internally, externally, however you choose. And so it captures all of your capital needs that we identified through the next 10 years. And they did a really great job of helping us put all that together. This is the welcome page. So I'll just kind of take you through the format here because I don't think you've seen this before, right? Okay. So the format is you see the 4 blocks across the top. And you will have a link, the school district will have a link now that goes directly to this. And you can do what you want to with that link. 4 blocks across the top, it's a welcome page. So this gives just an overview of here's our capital plan. This is what it's intended for. Kind of a high level look. And then we get into the actual capital needs of the school district. And on the capital needs page, in the overview, we have multiple screens. So the first screen is showing here's the summary of some of the most pressing capital needs across Lakota's 21 buildings. It gives you a high level. Roofing, HVAC, and plumbing are all high needs throughout the district. At the bottom, it's showing you total capital plan over the next 10 years. So that's 10 years worth of what we have identified, which is $87.6 million. Inside of that $87 million is this breakdown. So facilities make up about 40 million of that. Operations is 19.7, technology 17.66, and across the board. So you get a quick look at everything inside the plan from a high level view. Down the side are each one of the various departments, if you will, so that we capture all capital needs. Everybody thinks of, when you think of capital plans, they think of the facilities. And that's certainly a huge part. As you can see, it's $40 million what we identified. But there's other pressing things on those resources, and those include technology, curriculum, and so forth. So we made sure we have identified all of those areas so that everything is covered. Lots of times the school district will plan for something they need on the facility level, only to find out there's a surprise on the technology infrastructure that presses on those same resources. So we've identified all areas and all departments across the capital plan. When we click on these icons, then we get to starting to look at the numbers. And this is a bar chart that shows you by year. So 1 year at a time, now we can see which categories are making up what needs. So we can see we've got a considerable amount of need each year, but here's, if I want to hover over, I can see what specifically is rolling up to the 2028 a year, fiscal year. And so you can see that inside facilities, you see the legend here, the facilities are blue. We can see that we've got HVAC, flooring, parking lots, and et cetera, and down through the list. So this is what we found that is coming due or we expect to need in 2028. So it's a quick visual. If you're more like me, you want to see the actual numbers, we can click on the detail here. And the detail is going to give you it's the same data, but now it's in a number format because I like numbers. So I want to see the numbers, right? So we've got, and this method is throughout the whole plan. So we've got the narrative first, then we have the graphic that shows the bars, and then there's the numbers so that you can see what the actual calculations are. This is the overview page. So this is all rolling up to specific. So if we said, well, we've got $6.1 million worth of facility needs identified in 2027, that doesn't tell me a whole lot, but it gives me, I know what we were planning on facilities. I'd really like to know more about that. So if I click on facilities and grounds, it's the same method here now. Here's the narrative saying this is what's inside facilities and grounds. You'll notice the bottom has changed. We still have the total capital needs of 87.6 million. Facilities is 39 million. But now the breakdown is inside facilities. So I can see how much of that is roofing, how much of that's parking, HVAC, etc. Same model then, same method. I can click on the bar chart, and the bar chart shows me across all the facilities how much of that is roofing, how much of that's electrical. So we've got a quick visual. If I wanted to see more specifics, I can click on the numbers. And now I can see it's roofing. I can see the location specifically and which roofing section it is or what the specific description is of the need. And where do we think, what year and how much is inside of that facility overview. If there's a lot of scrolling here because there's a lot of needs. So if I want to cut to electrical, let's say, I can click over here on the electrical and it's going to take me right to, here's all of the electrical by building throughout the district identified over the 10-year period. Questions so far? Okay, if I want to really get into building by building, then I'm just interested in one specific building. I can go to the elementary buildings, I can click on Adina. And now I'm going to see Adina's information just specifically for Adina. And so I can see same method, total capital plan 87.6 million, total facilities 39. Adina is 1.1 of that. And so of that 1.1, Adina is looking pretty good, but there's a little bit, there's a roofing project coming due and an HVAC project, about 400,000 each of those. So I want to see a little bit more to understand what that is. And you see, I'm doing okay until 2030. We've got to address some of those needs out there by 2030.
So for example, with Adina Plumbing, it shows $6,000, but my understanding is they have bathrooms that are not always functional and sinks in classrooms that aren't working. And so this doesn't include any of that. It's helped me understand how with as many times as their bathrooms are not functioning, it's
We probably put the bathrooms out as a separate, not just plumbing.
okay.
We put them as a separate, we need to work on the bathrooms.
Okay.
Let me see if I can find the specific.
Isn't there something about like to tie in the sinks in the classrooms, it would cost, we have to rip up the whole floor, is
You would
that?
have to move the
Yeah.
floor and remove the floor in Adina to make that flow. It's about, Adam, what did we talk about the last time? We got to figure, remember we talked about that?
The amount to fix,
Yeah,
less than
yeah,
200,000.
200,000.
So we
That's
have
the
like,
number I had in my head. I was checking.
so we have like the specific plumbing things you mentioned in here. But they would also, you would go to the specific areas for the bathrooms or whichever those, added projects are. Over and above. So you could do just the bathroom sinks and mirrors, but that wouldn't get to the point, right? That wouldn't fix the whole bathroom issue. Once we're in a building, and so that might be a picture. Let's see. I don't know if we captured that picture yet or not. There we go. We did not. So we'll be able to put pictures of the actual needs. So if Adina bathrooms are the issue, then we would have a picture of those bathrooms here. So you could see, well, this is the problem, right? This is what we're looking to address. We haven't got all the way to the pictures being completed yet. Also inside the buildings we can do, and we're still working on this, but enrollment versus capacity. We need to talk just a little bit about whether or not that's the full story, or do we want other demographic information about the buildings in this section? So we can do anything from, we've seen districts put the building was built in 1964. The last renovation was done in 2010 and it's cost this money for each renovation along the way. That goes here on this page along with enrollment pieces. And we're still working to finish that. So we can go into any one of the buildings and get to that information. These are the elementaries, and we've got them all subcategorized. So we can look at total elementaries across the board. So this shows all the elementary data, or we can go to the junior high and look at all the junior high across the board. With the ability then to drill into each one of the specific buildings. Also have added the ability to, if there's something that isn't considered a high priority, we can pull out the different priority levels. You'll see not much was identified in the junior highs that was low priority. There's a little something here. Everything was pretty high or medium priority. Any other questions on the facilities? I'll go through a program or two here.
Is the document live, like, can it be changed, like, for instance, if something were to come to fruition and Adina, let's say, would be taken offline, is this easily redone, I guess is the word I'm looking for.
Yes. So we treat this like a living document, almost like your 5-year forecast.
Okay.
If we said, oh, here you go, here's your capital plan, leave it alone, see you later. It's gonna be outdated in 6 months, right? Because all the planning in the world doesn't capture some parts of it. So yes, we would plan to come back and actively engage.
We actually had D1 and C1 options in this for master facilities so that we could pivot very easily, right? So we had both options in there, but when we kind of decided on C1, we took that D1 out, but we were building multiple options that we could see going forward and easily were able to remove those and it updated like immediately.
I'll go ahead and take you to that punchline and we can come back to some more of these programs if you want to. When we get to the finance plan here on the top, you'll see over here, now this is looking at the forecast. If we look at the amount of revenue coming in against the expense that we identified. And so you can see it, we're in the red each one of these years. Now, some of this does not have any of the stabilization or reserves in the number. So if we put budget stabilization and reserves back in, because the expenses from these items are in the numbers, right? So if we put these reserves in, you can see this is the forecasted challenge. And here's the plan if we use the reserves. So we can use up all our money and stabilize. Probably not a good idea. But it would help us make this a viable plan. Then we'd be out of money and have to face the next thing. So you have to be a little careful with that. But we did to superintendent's point, here's the C1 option. And the C1 option, you'll notice the C1 option, when I click that button, it takes out renovations that we would not have to do because we've pulled those buildings offline and so forth. And it puts in the new cost of the payment, for C1. And so when it does that, you can see it's not a very big difference without C1 and with C1. So for the same money, you're getting a much better capital plan because that C1 option is going to go out 20 years, 25, probably. It's going to last a while, longer than that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's going to take you out there much further. Without the C1 option, you're right back there again by 2032, 2033, trying to solve a major problem. So C1 is in here for that kind of modeling. And so to your point, we can put in different, scenarios so you real time can see how it's impacting the capital plan.
So I guess I'm struggling with, particularly, for example, Adina. When I look at like $1 million into Adina, I can't imagine that it's really a positive learning environment at the end of $1 million. So how, and we talked about with the, I'm gonna not know the proper terms, but with the state's manual of bringing things up to where they would have them today, like where are we on the continuum of making it a learning environment that is just barely functional to meeting the standards as if it was built today with
Yeah.
these numbers? Because that feels like quite a
They're very different.
continuum.
They're very different.
And is this just bare minimum, or is this somewhere in the middle, or where are we with these investments?
Like, so for example, when we talk about the water, right, you can fix the water in the floor to the sinks. This number does not reflect to make bathrooms ADA compliant, right?
Okay.
So it's kind of like the difference when we talk about the high school and you tie the buildings together, right? If you start tying the building together to bring it up to code,
Right.
current code, that's a whole different number.
Right.
So to your point, this is more on we're making it functionable rather than we're making it meet standard codes,
Okay.
enhanced programming, those kind of things.
And so that would have to be adjusted in a case where a plan did not come to fruition.
Correct. So let's say, for example, in November, if we decide to put a bond on in November of any kind, or if let's say that's unsuccessful and we
Right.
decided to pause, C1 would have to be completely taken out, and we would have to adjust those numbers a little bit for long term because he mentioned those buildings that are going away, those don't have those numbers kind of built in.
So to tell your story better with this, just to enhance the conversation a little. This line here is we do nothing different. There's not any improvements. We're just maintaining pretty much what we have. So that's the forecasted, amount. We're running into the hole and we're not getting any better building. This C1 option changes that to plan, but to your point, what we might want to do is pull out, instead of it calling it the C1 option, we might want to list here and say, improve Adina's bathrooms, add ADH compliance, we might pull the things that are in the C1 plan and put it on here as check boxes so that folks can see what they're getting when that happens. And then this line would show the results of those project improvements.
Like heritage,
So,
if heritage
yeah.
remained the same and we did not want children having to use stools in the facilities, we would need to build that out to make sure that it functions in the grade band that it might have to be for long term if we did not have a successful master facilities plan.
So we can't necessarily use this to replace everything the architect does because there's not enough room on the page.
Right.
Right. But we can
It'd be a
certainly
bump.
get to those high level items that people care about, that your community wants, and we can click those on there and say, we'd like this check, we'd like this check, we'd like this check. Where does that leave us with the finances? And in many cases, as we saw with the C1 option, the numbers are better or the same, and you've got a much better solution. Because we're taking off the cost that's already there just to keep what's not improved.
Well, I think it's a balancing act. Because even in November, if you would put something on the ballot and be successful, it's not like on November 8th, Adina's gonna go away. It's still gonna be. So where's the balance of spending a ton of money, but to Julie's point, making sure that it's an educationally sound environment for the.
Well, even something like, I know we talk a lot about bathrooms, but Mr. Kaufman and I were having a conversation about the West freshman track. It's not usable,
Yeah.
right? It's not usable. And really, we have expanded our involvement and our student involvement, which is great, but we really need that additional track, right? To be able to do some things with. Well, the thing is, what is cost effective when you know that possibly that building is going to go away and the investment in that? So there are some things that, like you said, regardless of what happens in November, there are some choices to be made about how long can we massage between the interims of time that we might be looking at.
Yeah.
Programs then it's laid out again, we follow the same method. So if I click on technology as an example, total plan technology, here's the breakdown inside of technology. And if I click on here, I can see how much per year inside the technology and what those are, what the general categories are inside of tech. I can hover over and see.
That's WAE technology.
I'm not sure
Did you
why
have a
that's
question?
right as well.
Yeah. What the green WAE technology, what the WAE stood for.
I do not know. Does anyone?
What is it?
We are power.
We are.
Sorry, it just glitched. Yeah.
But it breaks down what that is if you click on it, so you can see all the, okay.
Business student devices, cart replacements, etc. So from here, I think the next piece for us is to fill in any pictures that we might want to put into the model and get to where this finance plan is portraying, projects that we want to call out along the way. Which is, like I said, that's very fluid. We can add, delete, move around as we go.
Wow.
So it's each department worked on this to help build out their particular investment area
And you'll see on the board action timeline that we're getting ready to review, we would review this twice a year to make sure that we're keeping that updated and in a cadence so it doesn't get kind of lost or pushed. There's also, I think, an opportunity for internal communication of this and external communication of this that we can certainly talk about once we kind of get more accustomed to this and using it. But I do think, I mean, something like roof, right? I think people, when you look at those numbers, just how much roof we have and like roofing we have and how much that costs, I think there's a little bit of a shock value in that, or even parking lots. I said in front of somebody the other day what parking lots cost us, and they were like, "What?" And I was like, "Yeah, like when you have as many buildings that we have, that is a ongoing maintenance." So I think there's an internal piece for us to train about and have some conversations with our principals and with our leadership teams, but then also externally, how we can be very transparent with our public about these are our costs and what it means.
Do each of our principals bring capital improvement components that
Yes.
they would like in their budget hearings?
Yeah, so it's
every
not
year?
actually in the budget hearings. They meet with Craig. And sometimes Craig or myself or Aaron or a combination thereof, and they talk about kind of those long-term items. In fact, I was having a conversation last night at the retirement situation with the principal about where to put that and how to kind of allocate that in their budget. So yes, those are ongoing. I think right now, as we know, we're in the high priority, medium priority, and low priority. Like there is a ongoing list. But we talk about that money river. It's not there. And so you have to prioritize what of that can get done and which of that is more, and this is where I struggle, which of that is more functional versus aesthetic, right? We're trying to get the functional done first, but there are some aesthetic things like even at like Adina or Heritage or things like that that need addressing, but the functional certainly comes first in the priority and balancing those.
So when they submit their budget, it is not a, here's what I want and they get everything. It's a priority.
Oh, no, absolutely not.
We only
Absolutely
have
not.
3 million or something
Mhm.
a year, right?
I mean,
Total.
when you have as many buildings we do and as many square footage as we have, even something like paint. I mean, even if you painted every building, I mean, there's just some cost in that. So it's definitely prioritizing and triaging what needs to come first as far as functionality. And roof and parking lots, I mean, they are what they are. Those have to be on a rotation to keep up with them. So sometimes if it's a heavy, parking lot year and Craig's done a great job of trying to balance that and maybe do just some seal coating or patching and things like that instead of a whole new parking lot situation, but trying to make sure that we have a rotation for that so that that doesn't fall behind and you're playing catch up in that as well.
This was a lot of work. We appreciate this.
It's just, I've been in there several times just kind of looking, and it's amazing how the money breaks down.
Right.
Like I kind of joke, if you're the Dave Ramsey person who like puts all the envelope system, like this helps you see all the envelopes and you're like, oh, that's a lot of envelopes. And some envelopes need more in them.
Right.
It's just, we're trying to distribute the pot of money that we have.
If you go up to the top level again, is all of that stuff currently in permanent improvement, or is some of this stuff now coming out of the general fund, or what's kind of the split? Because
Yeah.
I wouldn't have thought of all these things on here as traditionally, like you were saying, is.
So like curriculum's a good example,
Yeah.
right? Curriculum's permanent improvement. It's got to last 5 years or more. Some of those things are in permanent improvements and things you'll see in technology on like a roof or something like that. But then there are the ongoing day-to-day things that don't fall in permanent improvement that are coming out of our kind of regular budgets.
So this is entirely the things that qualify for permanent improvement only.
But may not necessarily be part of that fund.
That's
in
right.
our-
There might be a little bit here or there
Okay.
that's picked up out of general fund, but not a lot.
Well, that's more a function of if we had enough in the permanent improvement, it could
Yeah.
come out of that, but given that we don't,
Yeah.
that's when we have to dip into the general fund for what could potentially be PI.
And to kind of put that, just contextualize it a little bit, the next 10 years of just roofing needs alone use up 3 years of all of your revenue in PF.
And we've discussed this in several different topics within that same concept of when you get tapping into these other funds for things that should be in different funds, it long-term makes it hard to see where we should be.
Right.
It makes it just harder to track. So manage it. We manage it within the transfer line, so managing it there at least keeps it so everybody can kind of see where we're going and what's doing. Otherwise, once it hits those general fund account codes,
Yeah, you
that
don't know.
people, if people don't know what they're looking for, sometimes it can be a little harder to see.
Any questions? Who has the money tree?
River.
River, the money river. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It was a joy working with your team. They really did a great job. So thank you.
Thank you. All right. So kind of in cadence of, having this kind of long-term outlooks, regular cadence of things. I can certainly put this on the board, if needed as well. Let me pass these around. And I think we might have had this in the past at some time, I'm not sure. I know when I came in, there was a discussion of just having a regular cadence, and not having to reinvent the wheel so that we know what is coming each and every month. So just to explain the document in front of you, this would be, board action items that would go on an agenda each and every month so that, anyone new, like our new treasurer or our administrative assistants, or even myself or us could go, what do we do in October? What do we do in November? So that agenda's planning and setting really becomes easy. The green you will notice, and again, this is in draft mode, the green you will notice just for ease is Treasury Department, Adam's parts. He's looked at that just to pull that out. And then everything else. So the board action item column would be what would go on the agenda. The board planning meeting, you'll see that middle column is much more sparse in nature, but that is because these are discussion-based meetings, right? We are not taking action. So that is a little bit light because they're more, if you want to call them ad hoc agenda items, things that come up that we need to discuss. And this is administrative actions. Those are more for internal planning. So things that we need to make sure that we just don't lose on the radar. Like you'll see capital conferences on there. You'll see some club processes. So that's not really a board needed thing. That's a back end, like administrative team, admin assistants, making sure we don't lose that. So the board action column is what I would encourage you to review month by month to see if there's anything that you would like placed in a different plot spot, anything you would like to move. What I will draw your attention to on the first, and also on the back page, the very back page, you'll see all meetings, because we didn't want to put them on everything. All meetings will have the student spotlight, student achievement, finance reports, committee reports, personnel, all of those things. But instead of it being clunky and adding it to every meeting, we just captured them there. But like, for example, we've really worked hard, our curriculum team has worked hard with our HR department to make sure that our staffing conversations and our curriculum conversations are matching up. In the HR world, you used to be in good shape if you were making postings before spring break. That has shifted in the world of education, where we're all vying for the same candidate pool. Now that's more like February. So that has impacted our scheduling timeline and tilting that back. So if you'll notice, we will now be doing the program of studies in November and reviewing those course changes. What that means, I mean, you would vote on it in November, but what that means for our curriculum department is that work gets pushed back to about September and October, which is pretty early, right? We're normally doing that in October, November, and December. So that is a change. You see the report card presentation that we would have on there. There's also some different presentations that you will see, like in October. I would like to start having a cadence of HR speak to you about kind of our hiring, what we've done, transitions, full-time equivalents. You'll also see there in later months, I think it's in May, you'll see, maybe it's not May. There's one in there as well about like child nutrition, giving you an update every year so that we can see kind of how that fund is going. Are there things that we're noticing as far as lunch prices, all of those kind of things. So departments kind of having a steady cadence of being in front of the Board of Education and giving them an update in their 20 square feet. You'll also see in October, is it October? There should be it's not popping out to me. Let me find it. I feel like there should have been an enrollment update on here.
Reviews under board planning meetings in September.
Yes, thank you. That's right. We had talked about doing enrollment, not just for master facilities, but that we've learned that in 18 months enrollment can do a lot of things, right? So not a formal like audit like we did for the master facilities plan, but rather a internal discussion, making sure that we understand what those enrollments are looking like and why they might be trending in the way that they're trending. So looking at everything from students who withdraw to go to private schools, looking at our voucher numbers, looking at things like ASC forms and open enrollments, and really just having a good discussion of that and doing that every October. I also think that discussion really is important for our principals. Sometimes narratives pick up around enrollment that aren't exactly accurate. Like you might hear a principal go, "Oh my gosh, we have so many new kids," and you go, "Wait, we really only have like 24, right?" Like just helping them understand what the facts are, so that we don't perpetuate narratives just based on what we feel, but actually we have numbers. So I think that enrollment review would not only be important for us, but making sure that we communicate that down to our leadership exactly about what those numbers are actually looking like and being able to project those. So I just wanted this in front of you to see if there's anything missing, if there's anything you want added, or if you're like, I'm not sure that's in the right month that I like.
I think for me, at least, I'd like to spend a little more time
Mhm.
with this.
Yep,
to
absolutely.
Be able to have
Yep.
some more feedback.
Mhm.
I'm also just, again, at first blush, like August, September, somewhere
Mm-hmm.
in there, just kind of like maybe this would just be in student achievement, but like kind of just a school opening highlights,
Okay.
like what's.
Yeah,
What
that
do we
would be,
see?
that'd be a
What do
good
we-
student achievement thing.
Yeah.
That's a good
Okay.
idea. Yeah, I think looking at it
Yeah.
and taking some time to.
Yeah, if you will, like I said, I think this would just be a good document for us all, right? So we can pull this out during agenda setting, or again, in the transition of personnel, we can say, hey, here are kind of standard
Yeah.
items. So if you'll look at these, I'll make sure also to give these to Mr. Horton and Mr. Nguyen. If you can just get me any feedback, let's say there's a little bit going on this month. I mean, in case you haven't noticed with graduations and everything, and I'll put this in my board update as well. Let's aim for, let's just aim for the 29th, end of the month.
Okay.
Okay. That'll give us several weeks to look at and review.
Question for me to help build out a calendar, because I'm going to try to align finance committee calendars into this calendar as well. We've got a couple that's in the wrong bucket of like December when you see the financial forecast review, and then in January, those should be January and February for the approval. Question I would have is like if we look at August here at the top, same with those. Normally we would say, okay, let's do the review of that in July. We're trying to get back into that cadence. Everything's been a little wonky. Would you prefer that be a regular board meeting, or would you prefer for this in August approval of the financial forecast be in the work session of August? Because depending on where that lands, I'll know then to put the first draft into July or August
Well,
finance committee.
if we're trying to not have approvals, do business at the work session, I would prefer to keep that clean and not.
Well, that's not an approval. It's
Oh, you said approval.
it's the first draft like we've done where we just talk it over.
Okay.
Would that be better for this group to have in the work session? I think that would make
In
sense.
August,
In August's
Yeah.
work session, if then later in the month at the August regular, it was to be approved.
I think because July can be hit or miss with vacations, to me, August would be better because I think we have a better chance of having everybody around the table in August. I don't know, that's just my thought.
And then the same rules would apply in February. That's
Right,
the same concept.
right, same concept, February work
Yeah,
session
'cause-
discussing it. Yeah,
Because then I would be able to say, okay, so February work session is where we'll talk about the forecast. February board meetings where we would approve the forecast. But then based on the timing that we currently have, then in January, finance committee, prior to the work session, we would review that as
break
well.
that there.
Does that seem like it would make sense?
That makes sense.
Does to me? Okay,
Yeah, makes sense.
cool.
So yeah, if you, like I said, I think that there are that enrollment review is new. You'll see some steady cadence like HR or special ed, gifted, and ELL, like having those steady reviews. Again, I put including a value added on October, but that is all dependent upon the state of when they
Right.
get us that data. But again, you will notice some things are earlier. Because we were trying to work in the staffing and the curriculum piece, which again will be a little bit heavier lift on our curriculum department to make sure that everything is like you're gonna start school and feel like we're already talking about the next school year,
Right.
just because we have to make sure that we're in that steady cadence. So if you will look at this, like I said, you're welcome to look at the administrative items too. They're pretty granular when it says for like, plan for certain things or make sure that we schedule conference things. But I just wanted to make sure that that didn't get lost in the shuffle of things. Like myself, when it says plan for board recognition month, right? We just need to make sure that we need to make sure those things are on our mind because the calendar year goes fast, as we know. So if you'll look at this, I'll make sure to give this to Mr. Horton and Mr. Nguyen. I'll also include this in my update linked so that you have it. And I'll give you all commenting features, or you can just email me either way. Okay.
And is the program of study approval?
Yeah, program of study approval would be in November.
Okay.
Mhm. Yeah. So what that would probably mean, just to backtrack that, there's a lot of lift that goes into that program of studies because you also remember this year we got in the cadence of presenting to you changes for new courses and things like that. So going forward, instead of you having to approve the whole thing like we did this year, next year we would present the changes to you. And so it'd be a little bit easier lift on you than having to read that entire program of studies. You would just be hitting the highlights of what new courses have been added, what have been modified, or what have been deleted. Anything else with that? Okay, I'll give that to you. Mr. Zink, I think we're good.
So we are good and ready for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Is there any discussion? Anybody not want to adjourn? Just gonna hang out? Mr. Zink, will you please call the roll?
Mr. Organ,
Yes.
Ms. Schaefer?
Yes.
Ms. Casper?
Yes.